Alright, so I'm trying out my my head camera here. I actually just got this from a buddy of mine that was getting rid of some GoPro stuff. So I was like, you know what? That is something too cool. I am going to check it out and see how it does. So this is my very first video on this. I'm pretty confident I have it adjusted correctly, but I'm going to learn through this. I probably won't even put this out there. More or less a trial video, but just in case I do decide to put it out there, I would very much like to do something other than just walk around here and waste time. This here, as you can see, has just been recently washed out. What I'm trying to create on this end of my field and over there is swales. That way what will take place, instead of the water when it rains real bad trying to wash out all of my field, that it comes along either side of it. Now I have a creek over here and I have a creek over on that side. All that water is trying to get to those creeks. Now the two creeks actually meet right down in the corner here at the edge of the property. Whew, and you got a little chilly. But essentially what we've got going on is some natural swales through the years that have been washing out here. As you can see, this has been going on for a while, all this erosion. What I want to do is try to keep this from happening to anywhere else in my field, and as time progresses, build this up. As you see here, I got a lot of fallen sweet gum trees. A lot of these are all gum trees, which I plan to cut down and essentially build up a hugelkultur bed in here. That way, as time progresses, it'll wash all kind of silt and soil, what have you, and build this back up. This is the bottom of the field. If you can see up there, you've got a higher elevation essentially at every point all around me, and all of the water is trying to channel into these two creeks on the side of me and meet down there. There's a pretty significant elevation drop all around me. So one thing that's pretty fun, these prickly pear cactuses, there's one here, you can see one over here. This one is a good example because you can kind of see what's going on here. See, here's the end of it. It is essentially a big petal like these, and you cut it off and put it out there in a corner somewhere, maybe with like a wet paper towel or a wet towel, if you will, over the top of this to keep it moist. What it'll do is start throwing out little roots and shooting out these petals out the end. Once it starts doing that, you can just go and lay it on the ground and do like I did here, essentially just let the lawnmower go ahead and mulch over it. As time progresses, this has turned into one of those big old prickly pear cactus plants, if you will. One over there. I've got one right here. See, this one didn't do as well. See how it's curling up and what have you? This is essentially what you're looking at. Now, there are some roots that are starting to grow in there. You can see that. So I'm not going to pull this up, but this one is essentially telling, showing you what you're looking at. You just cut it off. The cactus is going to eventually root and start growing from that. Here's another one of those petals you can see, and it's shooting out some. It looks like I hit this one actually with the lawnmower. What I want to do to show you a little bit more of the swales that I have going on here. This one here is a swale. Try to keep any water that flows down. Since I've eliminated tilling and just, you know, constantly mulching. If you see here, these over the last few years, you know, I've still got some mulch going, and I've got some pretty nice looking dirt, nice looking soil, if you will. Whenever you clump it together and if it kind of sticks like that, that's when you know you're working with something at that stage. If it falls apart, you know, then you want it to hold some moisture, okay? So you want some sand in there, you want some clay in there, you want some silt. I want mine to look darker than this, but you know, I've only been really bringing this soil back for this is probably my 3rd year at this stage, so that's not bad. I mean, that's actually pretty impressive to me. I'll show you a comparison. If you look over here, I'm letting all this stuff grow as a buffer, not only for wind, but also for erosion. So when water is coming off of this field, because they plow this field. One cool thing about this situation is all this was the same a few years ago. I started taking over this and doing the no-till method, doing the permaculture style, letting the native plants essentially grow and reestablish themselves. And right over here, you still have the typical farming method. I think this is winter rye, winter wheat, what have you. But this is the line. So you can see essentially the difference, and you can also see the higher elevation. All that water is essentially wanting to flow over there to the creek, and then the creek also flows down this way. So just take another look at the soil here. You can see the difference in color. You start seeing a little bit more of your orange and Georgia red clay. Now the thing is, you can actually see water squeezing out of this. This soil is so much more moist than what I was just over there with, because it's just been recently tilled. You do get some benefits to tilling, of course, that's why people do it, but long term, you're damaging your soil. You're not letting your topsoil remain topsoil. You're essentially turning it through. So it's almost like you taking the bottom layer of your skin that's supposed to be the bottom layer of your skin and turning it over. The top layer of your skin isn't the top layer of your skin anymore. That's the way the soil and nature wants to look at this whole soil thing. Here we got some nice deer tracks. So when you think about turning the soil over, that's what you're doing. You're essentially taking the top layer of skin and turning it over. It's not the best thing for the soil. But what I like about this situation is through the years, we're going to see the difference in progression. I'm breaking away from essentially 2 years of doing what I'm doing from this right here, and I'm already seeing benefits in the soil. I'm already seeing, you know, stuff like this coming around, like the hairy vetch and the winter rye and stuff just growing up randomly. Now, what you see here, this right here hardly ever gets hit by the sun this time of the year. You can see the sun is right over there, but these pine trees block it out. So what's going on is all this water here, it's wanting to flow right down my road this time of the year. You can see right here where I dug trench in with the Subaru, essentially to keep the water on this side. That way I can drive over there and otherwise keep it from being less swampy. But all this water is flowing through here right now, because this is the lowest point in this field. All this field, as you saw me squeeze that water out of a handful, imagine how much water is soaked up into that field right now. All of that wants to get down to this creek over here, as I said, or that creek over there. So it's flowing through this way. you can see what's happening. That's going to create soil erosion. All this is really awesome fucking dark, you know, good soil to plant stuff in. Ideally, I don't want to disturb this and destroy this every year when it gets wet and nasty. So what I've got going on here is all that water will trickle down. It's going to accumulate right here. What I'm essentially going to do is plant some reeds that I have down over there by the creek, start establishing them here. That way this right here will absorb a lot more of this moisture. But just this year, what I did, you can start seeing the start of it, is I had taken a tiller and tilled all this. So I tilled it all the way up to right in here. This in here is natural from the water just falling from the slope. All this used to be really soggy to where I couldn't even walk through it. Now it's quite nice. I think the video of the ducks, when I first got the ducks, you can even see in here. This is where I brought the ducks for the first time to play. This was essentially what I started with, if you look back in that. I think it was Waffles and his friends video, if you want to check that one out. But right now we got this water trickling through the swale. As you can see, the water is trickling through just like I want it to, all the way down. It's coming all the way through here. All through here. Now we had a heavy rain the last few days, so this was actually filled up a couple of days ago. It was actually a little soggy right in here where I'm walking, but last year this was like just nasty. If you drove through here, you'd probably get stuck in the mud. So what this is doing is already starting to slow down. You've got no water on the top here. Yesterday you did. It was actually flowing all the way down here. And two days ago, it was really rough. You'd see the water flow all the way through here. It washes this area out. Now I did have a problem, like I said, with water sitting here, standing here. I didn't appreciate that, and I didn't see myself putting all these trees along in here if I was going to have a big old like swamp freaking lake here for a month or two out of the year during the wet season, which is now during January, February time. I'm going to get a darn heap of rain falling down here. So I wanted to figure out a way to channel all that in a way that it helped my trees in the long run. This swale is the starts of that. All this was full, and it literally channeled all of the water. Instead of it turning into a swamp, it beautifully channeled it all the way through here, and it actually started to come through and work its way down into the creek down there at this point. Once the water got moved over here, I started seeing even like, see there's a hole here, there's little trickles where water was just spilling up out of the ground along in here and would work its way down in there. So it's kind of neat how it all worked out. I think this is one of them. Yeah, so you can see where the water came out here and went into the ground actually at this stage and started spilling out here, and just poured through down into here, you know. I think this is a nice crawdad hole or something of that effect. You see them all around, but when it was really wet, there's a number of these that shot up. Now that it's starting to dry, it's starting to recede. See, here's another one. I will randomly be walking around on this property and get all kind of different springs find its way. Same thing here. Water's flowing through. You can actually see here where it went underneath. See that stick? I can whoop move right up underneath here like so, but it flew through here and went up under the ground. Once again, there's a hole here where it's going underneath, then it's coming out here, flowing its way through. Ooh, what's that? Oh, just some trash. Flowing its way through. You can see it again making its way, probably making my blueberry bush unhappy, but getting its way down there to the creek once again. So it was kind of interesting seeing how this swell worked. And then of course at the very end, almost all of the water flowed down to that point, but enough got over here to where it just watered everything. So I've almost got this swell perfectly aligned, perfect amount of drop as time progresses. There's just a little bit more tweaking I need to do over the year, but literally all I did, you guys, is take a rototiller and just dug a hole in here, you know, to dug the soft stuff and placed it along here. And you can see as time progressed, there's not even a mound. It just smoothed itself out. But everything that was in here, I took out and put onto the sides. And you had a nice little channel about the width of the rototiller, and that's what's created this swell. Over the course of the year, I may hit this up one more time with the rototiller and do that again, but for the most part, I can just get away with taking a shovel and cleaning out the silt. Now, all of the nutrients from all of that field, because they are tilling it up, is getting washed down into this property, and I'm going to collect it all. So that's the thing about erosion. If you have a property that is on the bottom end of a typical, you know, farm, the way they farm typically with tilling up the soil and dual crops every year, that kind of thing, you're going to have essentially like the way Egypt is set up. How all of the Nile flows all that silt and just delicious goodness into essentially the choicest spots of the river along Egypt, right? It's what's happening here. All this stuff that I'm planting is going to be fed from them essentially raping and pillaging their shit. All that erosion is going to make its way down here and feed all these beautiful things that I'm planting. All because of soil management and water placement. When you understand how your landscape works, how the flow of the water makes its way from one end, the highest point, down to the lowest end, how the sun progresses from start to finish, what time of the year. So at this point, the sun is starting from over there and it's working its way up over here and back over that way behind those pine trees. Like I said, the sun never sees that wet spot over there on the road. Now during the summertime, what it does is goes from over there all the way up above us, about 12 o'clock. And it will be on this side of those pine trees and dry all this stuff out. So your optimum conditions as far as planting trees goes, you want to plant your trees in a sense along this way that the sun is moving. Any big trees that you have, so like this Japanese loquat, for instance, you want it to be in a sense in front of any bushes. So you want it to be behind, in a sense, any bushes, Because what's going to happen, this tree is going to grow up about 20-30 foot tall, right? It's going to end up shading out all of the stuff that you otherwise want some sun to get to. So if you're going to plant one of these, you want to plant, say, your bush in the front where the sun is going to come and still hit the bush, because your tree is going to be back here behind it. Things like this, say a blackberry bush, is cool and happy with being in the shade. So over time, this blackberry is going to be in the shade and be okay. But you don't want to start planting other, say, goomyberry bushes and blueberry bushes and stuff directly in the shade. You want them to kind of be in the sporadic shade, if you will. These guys here, this is a fig. It's going to grow huge and get plenty of sun, even if it's in the shade there. These are a little close when you're going to see 10 years from now. This will just fill up this whole area. This whole area essentially will be fig tree. Okay? Being this right here is in front of that fig tree, it's going to get plenty of sun. All this is going to be opened up. So you've got... This is going to essentially scour over this fig tree. All this in here is going to be competing for this little bit of space and sunlight and everything. That's what I'm looking for. Maybe in here I'll plant some ferns and, you know, like, I don't know, things that are cool with the shade. Got my figs, got my goomy berries. If you look over there, I got my weeping willows. I'll show you the weeping willows. I like the weeping willows. Another goomy berry. This is a mulberry tree. It's dormant. Goomy berries are starting to come. These are actually a citrus. The loquats are an everbearing, so you'll see they'll be green all year. Goomy berries. These weeping willows are pretty cool. They'll get really big and essentially have branches that look like this that just will wave around in the wind. Now all of my wind is essentially coming into here, so guess what I did is I put my 2 weeping willows out there to slow in the wind to help protect my plants, also give them some better shade. So as the sun hits during the hottest time of the year, it's going to be essentially directly right above these trees here, with these weeping willows creating a predominant amount of shade in this area. Over in here, this is an olive tree. It's cool with desert-like conditions, but something like the goomy berries, the Pakistani mulberry, the apple tree, it doesn't appreciate getting just hammered by South Georgia sun. So what you're essentially creating is shade during that hottest point of the year, hottest point of the day. You're going to have some shade on this stuff to give it a little bit of relief. On the flip side, remember the sun's coming from there. So you got morning sun, afternoon sun, even midday sun. Come 3 o'clock where it's going to be the hottest point, you're going to have a little relief on this stuff. That's cool. You got plenty of sunlight. So when you, like I said, you start mapping out your water table, how it flows through your property, how the sun is, how the wind is coming into your property, that's what dictates how you plant your trees. See how I got all my big gnarly pecan trees, weeping willows, shade trees, big trees over that way, so it not only blocks out what's going on out there, so I feel a little bit more secluded. I have essentially a circle in here. starting to build up, but it also slows down that wind. The wind coming across these open fields will be gnarly as hell on some of these trees. You know, once you have trees that are starting to block that wind and absorb that, it'll slow it down to where it won't bother, you know, your new plants. You also have, how's the sun gonna hit it at this point in time? How's the sun gonna hit it in 5 months from now? You know what I mean? How's the water table going to treat this soil during the wet season? Am I going to plant this at a low point where I'm going to have a big old puddle here that drowns out my plant? Because if your plant doesn't like standing water, it's not going to appreciate that shit. For instance, these pomegranates I had over there, when I was telling you about how soppy and soggy and what have you, these poor pomegranates were sitting in that, and a couple of them died from sitting in that, because pomegranates aren't appreciative of sitting in standing water for long periods of time. It took them a month for that to dry out. What I did is I not only moved it over here, I started trying to figure out how I can keep that from just being that swamp and standing water. After 2.5 days, that water channeled out of there and is not sitting in there stagnant, creating a swamp-like situation. You actually have good, thriving soil now. So, bam, accomplishment. Makes me feel good seeing this property in just a short amount of time come together, and using the permaculture style, you know, techniques, working with the property, working with nature, doing things like creating abundance, putting tons of variety out here: pomegranates, jujubes, loquats, figs, Russian pomegranates, apples, blackberries, Asian pears, different kinds of figs even. There's literally 7 different kinds of figs on this property now. 8, 9 different kinds of apple tree. All your different varieties are going to come at different times of the year. So what you want to do is you want to create a system where one tree comes out and starts flowering. You're going to have another 1 or 2 trees that are flowering, not at the exact time, but towards the tail end and towards the beginning. So you pollinate the trees as the days, the months, the weeks progress. If you have one variety, you're not going to have as much pollination going on. You're not going to have as many fruits. So if you have, not only are you cross-pollinating all of these different varieties, so as time progresses, birds, deer, they're going to plant you some favors. You're going to find a random tree over here. This peach tree over here is likely a cause of that. You're going to have this stuff just pop up on your property, and you're not going to know where it came from. Black Arkansas, all kind of different apple trees. I just want to check out the guineas. I don't get the guineas on here very often. See them all running away. Little guineas, little guinea friends. And the chickens and the guineas are over here hanging out. What's happening, little guineas and chickens? I'm clearing out in here. This is some more Japanese loquats. These really love this spot. These have just taken over. They're getting taller than me now, which is making me happy. So I've got 4 Japanese loquats. You can see those 2 over there, close enough to where any pollen and what have you get over here. Over the years, you're going to see this thing just take over, and the bees are going to love it. During this time of the year, it's almost the only flower that the bees will really be on. If you look around, there's just nothing for the bees to mess with. Now, my aunt has one of these that is probably 20 years old, just over through the woods, and it's covered with bees right now, I promise you, because it's starting to flower. This thing fruits in February, March time frame, so it's starting to flower now. And all the bees are going crazy at it. You'll actually get little flowers that start heading out of these, and then it'll flower. The bees are, you know, loving it, doing their thing. But that's also what I want to promote here is bee habitat. Bees right now are on the decline because of the way that we're treating our farms and because of our methods. Imagine spraying all of our fields down while bees are trying to do their magic. Guess what's going to happen to the bees? They're going to die. We're going to have less and less bees every year. So at this point, I'm trying to create a butterfly and bee sanctuary, if you will, because those are our pollinators, right? I want there to be more and more pollinators attracted to this place as time progresses. As time progresses, I'm going to create more and more things that pollinize, right? That have trees and plants and flowers and what have you. So as time progresses, you've got more and more pollinizers and more plants that create the pollen for the plant or the bugs to show up. It's just working with nature. Don't try to do it all in 1 year. That's our problem. The thing about nature is it moves really slowly. So it's very similar to, the Lord of the Rings when they're trying to get the Ent to hurry up and decide, hey, we need your help. Why did you decide? Oh, we just said hello. Everything takes a long time in Ent world. Everything takes a long time in nature. When you start trying to speed that process up, that's when you're fucking up. You just need to work with nature. It's like trying to get your grandma to move as fast as you. When you start getting grandma all riled up and trying to get her to move along, it's not going to work too well for you, right? You just need to let her do her thing. You guys set your pace to grandma. If you're going out to eat with grandma, you're going to need to, wait for grandma to spend the hour to go ahead and get ready and to do everything that she wants to do so she feels fabulous out there in public. And you need to walk a little bit slower with grandma. You need to do all these things. That's why you need to treat nature with respect, with the little bit of patience, right? Because you love grandma. You love nature. You need to treat nature with some love, with a little bit of patience, with a little bit of respect. Well, this is Brian signing off. I think that was a pretty fun video. Walk around the property, check out the helmet cam. Maybe I have everything set up to where I don't have to angle it. Let me just do a couple of different things real quick. This is about 90 degrees on my head cam. This is pointing down about, I'd say, not quite 45. This is probably more of the 45 degree angle. So if I'm wanting to hike, I'll probably be better off with something of this effect. Maybe in here. Um, 90 degrees again. What's up, Waffles? How do you look from here, Waffles? Sits. Sits. Waffles sits. Sits. Quit looking over there. Sit down. Sit down. Good boy. Shake. Shake other hand. High five. Roll over. Rollovers. That's not roll over. That's the laziest damn rollover I've ever seen. Roll over. Ooh, look at these snacks. Ooh, the snacks. You need snacks to roll over? Roll over. There it is. There's my rollover from my lazy bulldog. He doesn't smell no snacks. You can't fool me, huh? It says, I don't smell no snacks. You can't fool me. Well, this is Brian signing off. Take care.